Welcome to
People of Purpose.
People of Purpose.
People of Purpose.
People of Purpose.
People of Purpose is a podcast of inspiring people whose stories help you see things differently, live with intentionality, elevate the way you participate in the world, and take the necessary leaps in your life to seek and find your passions. Come with us and develop the courage to wholeheartedly pursue your purpose and unleash your truest potential.
Essentially, what my mission is to help young women know themselves and their abilities authentically so they can create the lives that they want in the world. I do life and wellness coaching as well as teach yoga privately and for groups. When things start to get easy or comfortable, that's generally when my mind kind of starts to work on, okay, what's next? When things are difficult, but they're still in line with your purpose, you're still going to feel energized when you're working on them, and you're going to feel excited about the challenge. And you might, have days when you don't feel excited or you feel exhausted or discouraged, but overall, you'll feel excited about it. Like, energy will build within you to keep going.
Our guest today is Julia Starr. I first met Julia in September at an open house for her boyfriend's nutrition, wellness, and coaching project called Wild Joy. I originally went to interview the founder of Wild Joy, Nick Knudsen, which will air on a later episode of the podcast. While talking to his girlfriend Julia after their event, I realized that she is without a doubt a person of purpose. I was first drawn to her confidence and her sense of contentedness. I listened to her story, which was full of career meanderings and all sorts of successes. I couldn't believe she had accomplished so much and was only 27. With roots on Bob Dylan's Iron Range of Minnesota, Julia has traveled around the world as a student, teacher, business strategy consultant, and a farmer. It's tough to put a single label on her, but she would describe herself as a feminist wellness warrior. The most common threads in her story are doing what you'd least expect and doing it really well. Whether leaving her small town upbringing to attend Claremont McKenna College in California, throwing herself into the competitive world of business strategy consultant as an international relations major, teaching English in Malaysia, or leaving a six-figure job to apprentice with her grandfather, she's become a Jill of all trades. Her overarching life purpose is empowering young women to know themselves and their abilities authentically, in order to connect the balance of masculine and feminine energies globally. Her current endeavor is Starr Health Co, which is a coaching and wellness platform that provides services to young women seeking support and guidance. Her grand vision is to create a virtual wellness offering targeted at young women that will be available to schools and employers around the world, combating the shocking rise of anxiety, depression, and mental health disorders in this demographic. Please enjoy my interview with Julia Starr. Hi, Julia.
Hey,
Where are we right now?
we're in my dining room in South Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excited to hear more about your dynamic lifestyle and see
Cool.
what I can take as wisdom from you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me onto your podcast. It's quite an honor.
Thank you. So, how do you balance seeking contentment but constantly striving for greater and greater achievements?
So, it's not easy for me, and it's a practice that I've worked on a lot because my quote-unquote personality type is one that gets a lot of value and worth from achievement. And I think it's something that our Western society reinforces. So I can kind of get like hyper stimulated on getting things done and winning accolades or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But there's another part of me, I think, that's really rooted in my values of community and giving back and just being honest. And that's kind of guided me to take a little bit more of a mindful path maybe. And Generally, when I reflect on what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, it helps me to kind of sift out those things that I'm doing just because it's going to feel good to get recognition versus what are the things that are important and I think will make a difference, and they're not always the same thing.
That makes a lot of sense. Cool. Yeah. Well, you clearly accomplished a lot. How old are you?
I'm 27 years old.
Wow. Makes me feel like I'm 13 or something. It's very cool.
Thanks.
So there's been various points along your journey where it seems as if you had a high sense of security, or most people would say you've made it. What do you think has been missing each time, or what is it that's on the other side that makes you take a leap of faith out of that position of comfort and into something that is much more unclear?
Mm-hmm. The first thing I think of is wanting to acknowledge that I do have a lot of privilege. So even when I take a risk, I understand that I have a security blanket that some people might not. I have a family that's very supportive, and I have, a resume to fall back on and things like that. So I understand that I'm privileged to be able to do so. So for example, when I was working for this consulting firm, it was something that I did because I knew I was going to learn a lot, and I wanted to become better, and I wanted to challenge myself. And I have a little bit of a bias towards if something isn't difficult, it's not worth doing, which isn't always true, but definitely working at that consulting firm when I first started out as an international relations student who had worked in development to go into the business world, that mindset drove me because I thought, well, it's going to be hard and that's good. I would say then what led to me wanting to leave that position and led me to change things in my life in other ways is when things start to get easy or comfortable. That's generally when my mind kind of starts to work on, okay, what's next? So while there are sometimes missing pieces, I think it's more guided by when I'm not challenged, I want to seek out that next thing that's really going to push me, because we have such huge potential as humans, and especially if you're in a position to communicate to people and you have a platform to stand on, I do think it's somewhat of a responsibility to do that and keep pushing yourself to take it to the next step.
Yeah. How do you differentiate between what's hard because it's just very difficult to achieve mastery versus what's hard because it's not in line with your true value system?
That's an awesome question. Again, I think it comes back to finding time to be reflective and seeing how it really feels to you. Because it's tough to differentiate. And I think if I could try to put it into a nutshell, maybe it's when things are difficult, but they're still in line with your purpose per se, you're still going to feel energized when you're working on them, and you're going to feel excited about the challenge. And you might, have days when you don't feel excited or you feel exhausted or discouraged, but overall you'll feel excited about it. Energy will build within you to keep going and working on that. I think when it's not in line, your energy just wanes and you end up feeling empty and kind of thin, like you're spread too thin, or you're not increasing your bandwidth or your capacity, you're just getting drained. So
what are some of your go-to reflection activities?
I meditate every day for 10 minutes. I would love to meditate for longer, but that's what I'm able to do on a daily basis. I love being in nature. So I grew up in northern Minnesota in essentially a forested area in a small town, but you could drive out of it 5 minutes and be in the woods. And so that has always been a place that I go. So in the city in Minneapolis, I can go to a river, I can go to a lake, but it's better to be further out where you can see the stars and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think perspective in nature is huge to stay grounded.
Can you recount the single most transformational experience you might have had in nature? How has nature been a tool for you to overcome something that's really difficult or maybe seemed catastrophic at the time?
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of instances, I would say nature has been really healing for me, but one was between freshman and sophomore year of college, I worked at a wilderness camp in central Minnesota that I was actually, my parents met at. I was baptized in the lake there. I am essentially part and parcel with the camp. But I went back between my freshman and sophomore years, and living in the woods and being with people who are, down to earth people who are willing to kind of get dirty and cook over a campfire and all of that brought me back to my roots and helped me to reorient, because freshman year of college I felt really adrift, and I went to school out in California and loved it, but there were a lot of challenges to my values, and it was kind of disorienting, I guess you could say. And so being in nature for 3 months, living in a tent, just helped me to disconnect from all of those things that were kind of scattering my energy, per se.
How was it to return back to Claremont after you had 3 months in a tent?
Well, I essentially made a new group of friends upon arriving back, and kind of came back with a fresh slate, and still had, good friends from freshman year, but just came at it with new eyes. And I was actually sophomore fall. I was really itching to get away, and so applied for a bunch of fellowships, and that kind of jump-started my interest in traveling and living and working abroad, and kind of redirected my whole college career. So
really,
yeah, just like a new set of eyes on the whole experience.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What was your draw to being abroad? Why is that important for you to be able to go abroad?
I blame my mom, because she has always put us in the car and just like driven off to a new place for us to see and learn. So I love connecting to people. I find people really fascinating. The, thing that everyone talks about is really true, that we all share a common humanity, and our external culture, appearance, those differences are only skin deep to a large degree. So I love that feeling of, meeting somebody new, whether it's, I lived in Malaysia for a year and in a small village, and I became really close friends with the woman who worked in the cafeteria who made the food for all the students, and she didn't speak any English, and I really spoke no Malaysian, Bahasa Melayu, but we became super close, and we ended up playing soccer together in a league and did all these things as friends. So I don't know, it's those relationships you can build, I think, more than anything, that keeps me wanting to go abroad and meeting people and putting myself into those situations.
How did being abroad in that type of setting affect your relationship towards time? I was living in Thailand in a large village or small town, and I just noticed that there was just so much time available for you to choose how you wanted to spend it. Mm-hmm. How did it affect your relationship to time?
Mm-hmm. It's funny, because when I'm abroad, I feel like my whole life has shifted, and then sometimes when I come home, it ends up shifting back to the way that it was before, sometimes in a way that disappoints me. So I think when I'm abroad, my relationship to time is, I just hold on to it a lot less tightly than I do when I'm home, because if you have kind of a limitless timeline, you're able to choose what you're doing every day just based on your intuition in that moment, rather than looking at your calendar and seeing the 10 appointments you have in a day. So there's a lot more freedom, and if you have experienced the state of flow or have heard of the state of flow, I think I'm able to exist in the state of flow more than in like a state of time, per se, when I'm abroad.
The state of flow is an amazing experience, too. Mm-hmm. I just read Stephen Kotler's book about this topic. He's a New York Times best-selling author sort of guy, and he talked about how you just have an amazing amount of creativity and inspiration pour out of you when you're just living effortlessly by time just propelling you constantly forward towards better and better things that give you energy and uplift you. Yeah, so you felt a state of flow when you were abroad.
Yeah. Definitely. And the one other thing I'll say is that I did, once I came back from like my most extended time abroad, I think I appreciated time a little bit more, whereas like if I had, this is my type A sense where like when I got home, I like wanted to fill my time with things. And so I kind of like the pendulum, and this is like an odd thing about me, is I can be really like disconnected and feel great and not have any anxiety about not doing anything, quote unquote. But then if I get put into a setting where it's like achievement oriented, then I'll just like hook into that and do it. And that also feels good to me. So it's kind of going back to what we talked about at the beginning of how to balance those two. And I'm grateful I have both.
And what's the appeal or the high of being high achieving?
I mean, like, I just know myself well enough that I know a lot of it is like being recognized for achievement. Like, just straight up, that's something I know about myself.
Shameless.
And I mean, I've done enough self-reflection and enough work with different people that it's maybe something that I learned as a child or something that I was rewarded for. And so I think being able to know yourself that well and be like shameless about like, well, this is something about me allows you to then build something around it and work yourself out of that behavior if you want to. But
you have not worked yourself out of the behavior of constantly striving for something greater, correct?
Correct. But I've also worked myself out of a career or a specific path that would have gotten me more acknowledgement faster.
I see.
So maybe I'm playing more of a long game now. I'm not sure. Maybe I haven't quite undone my ego, I'm sure, because I wish I could do that. But I think I've worked my way out of it a little bit, where I'm able to be more patient now in what I'm doing. And there are other values that are at play.
So why aren't you spending all your time living in a tent in northern Minnesota or in a village in Malaysia? What is it that you feel compelled to do in the outside world?
So I care deeply about young women's lives and experiences, and I see that there is a lot in the world that is stacked against them in terms of societal expectations and a lot of, like hypersexualization of the woman's body and lack of respect for the feminine attributes of creativity and problem solving and nurturing. So once I see something, and I could go on, but in my mind, there's an overwhelming set of problems and issues that are still facing women broadly, but especially young women when they're kind of developing their sense of self that can be harmful. And once I've recognized a problem, and especially this one because I experienced it myself, and I see friends experiencing the effects, I want to try to solve because, again, going back to kind of that responsibility as like a citizen of the world and a member of my community, my human community, if there's something I can do to I've talked with you about this before, but balance the feminine and masculine energies in the world, then I think I should do it. It would be awesome to retreat to a tent in northern Minnesota, but at this point that feels a little selfish.
You want to retreat with thousands of women that
right. We're all going to found our own country in northern Minnesota and yep.
Cool.
Start our own society. All right. You're on.
Very cool. Could you explain this theory about masculine and feminine energies in the universe? That's probably not just the most easily accessible topic for people to wrap their heads around.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the more mainstream way to describe it is that we live in a patriarchal society, which means that men largely control power. So whether that's in resources or leadership or, just money generally, which equates to power in a lot of realms. Media, all of these realms are largely influenced by men. And it's not a good versus bad, but our world was created with men and women, and when they're the masculine and feminine, which can be found in men can be feminine, women can be masculine, obviously. So it's not necessarily a gendered thing. But right now there's a predominance of masculinity and men generally influencing the way that our societies are organized and the way our markets are organized and the way education is done and the way world problems are solved or not.
What are you speaking to? Some sort of competition or striving for power? What is it that you're speaking to? What does a manifestation of masculine energy look like in the universe?
Mm-hmm. Well, testosterone overall is generally more aggressive, can be if it's, in large amounts and more dominant. And I think you could see that in how we treat the environment. There's a way that mankind has become dominant over the environment or controlling. So I think, It is a hard topic to like pin down because there's so many subtle nuances to it. But I think overall, there's a lot of violence in the world, whether it's towards other people, other countries, amongst businesses, against the environment. And I think in my view of the world, which is not one everyone would take, I attribute a lot of that to just the gross imbalance between that masculine and feminine, the testosterone and estrogen, and kind of being able to get back into a homeostasis per se, like our bodies get into when they're balanced with the right nutrients and clean water and clean air. We're able to filter out the unnecessary toxins, and we're able to keep our system clean and balanced and working right. I think our body is like a tiny microcosm that reflects how our world works. Our earth needs to breathe, our earth needs clean water, and we're the stewards of our earth, and we're the stewards of our community. And I think the homeostasis will be found when there is more balance between masculine and feminine.
Wow, that's eloquently spoken. I understand.
Was it?
That.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Especially when you apply something that we all can kind of relate to, like our body.
Mm-hmm.
Sickness and wellness are definitely related to imbalances.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're going for is really cool. What do you think is a role that I can play as like an agent for the type of change you're striving for? Because I am that white, Christian, straight, male, American figure. What is the role I can play in your mission?
Yeah, I mean, you can play a huge role in the mission. I think, first of all, being aware of like who you are, as you are obviously aware of the privilege and place that you sit in within our society. But I think first, like the constant reevaluation of like, who am I? What are the gifts that I've been given in the world? And then how can I use them in a way that raises up the voices of people who might not be in my position? Yeah. So whether you're, in a meeting with women and like you have the impulse to like start the meeting or like lead, like this is something that I've seen in the boardroom where a lot of men will start the meeting, and that's kind of the natural role, like asking your female colleague if she wants to start the meeting. But like creating space for a woman's voice to be heard, or another group that may be marginalized in some way. Like you have the ability as a white, Christian, hetero male to use maybe the platform that you've been birthed into to give it to somebody else.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So can you apply reflection and your skills of reflection to kind of the origins or the sources of this sort of theory that you've developed over time relating to masculine and feminine imbalances? What are some key texts or key experiences or thinkers or people that inform your opinion about this?
So when I was 16, my uncle, Jimmy, who I appreciate dearly, gave me a book called The Chalice and the Blade. And I am not remembering the author's name, so we might add that in later. But it essentially discusses how there is a lot of archaeological evidence that indicates that at one point we were a goddess-worshipping and female-dominated society. And I think from that point, I had a few like real-world examples of it not always being this way. So, I mean, maybe that propelled me a little bit in the work that I do today to know that, this isn't the way that it's always been. This is just the world that I was born into. I mean, there are a lot of, like, A Room of Her Own, or, like, just the classic feminist texts that I read in college were inspiring, you could say, in terms of just, like, there are so many women's rights activists and feminists who have gone before me who have, been probably less polite and more honest about what's going on and what injustices need to be addressed. So those inspired me, especially when I was younger. I mean, now I just have personal mentors who guide me and support me, and even at BCG, like my friend Jamie Rooney is a great mentor of mine who I met in the corporate world who keeps me on this path. But
What does she do to keep you on this path?
I mean, if I ask her for advice, she'll give it. She's somebody who's about 5 years older than me and has had her own questions about how she's going to balance. Like, she's a very similar person to me. And so when I face a challenge, she's generally been there and can listen and then offer guidance if I need it.
Do you think it's important that your mentor is a similar person with similar experiences, or is that not necessary?
I don't think it's necessary, but it's helpful. And I think if you can have many mentors from different backgrounds, that's fantastic and ideal. Jamie definitely plays into my personality type, which feels good at times.
How do you categorize your personality type?
Type A. Myers-Briggs, INTJ, just one letter away from the ultra striving, because I'm an introvert.
Yeah. So you're an introvert that is now the face and founder of a company, the voice of all of these ideals. How does that feel to be so out there with who you are and your ideas in such a public-facing sort of role now?
It's a challenge to keep putting myself out there because I don't know everything. So I don't want to ever appear that I do. But it's also an age in which individuals, brands are built around people to a large degree. And so I, want to be able to do that and be as honest and transparent as I possibly can in a way that attracts people to the work that I'm doing. Frankly, I feel honored that I can even do this work, or that I know how, or that I have a platform and a network that will support me and share my message. So it doesn't feel right or wrong. It's the way that I have to go about promoting my business and letting people know about it. And if I have to take a selfie to do it, then I guess I will.
So what is your business? How does your business work towards your purpose?
Yeah, so my company's called Starr Health Co, and it's a yoga and wellness company. I do life and wellness coaching, as well as teach yoga privately and for groups. Right now, it's a one-woman show, so I do all of the work myself. Essentially, what my mission is to help young women know themselves and their abilities authentically so they can create the lives that they want in the world. And going back to kind of the society we live in, I think a lot of that work is taking off a lot of what's been conditioned into people, and young women in particular, about what they should be doing and what their life should look like. Even if it's something that's promoted by other women, it's taking off all of those stereotypes and expectations and norms and getting down to when you get quiet, when you think about what activities give you energy, what activities drain you, what is the path that's showing up for you. So my work is a lot about taking away the stresses and expectations that young girls and women feel, and then giving them space to just feel into what it is that they want to be doing and what direction they want to go in and what they want to create in the world. Because there are a lot of very successful women who are still operating within, the businesses that men have built. So I want to see young women go out and build their own businesses and be their own political leaders and make their own decisions for neighborhoods or families.
Yeah.
So that's the work that I'm doing.
That's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen any impacts, a story of one of your clients or something that has gone through an amazing transformation?
I can't share particulars, but one young woman that I worked with, she was making a decision about a career, and she had some opportunities that were very highly sought after. And she was one of, very few people who were given these offers. And she wanted in her heart of hearts to pursue a more academic path and, work towards being a professor and being in the classroom and maybe a little bit more of a humble out of the spotlight role. And so we worked together and essentially doing coaching work. And she decided to take the path of going into further academia and turn down these different lucrative job offers to do so, and has been really well rewarded by choosing the other path by getting into the top programs and essentially, just like killing it in that world. And she's very happy and grateful that that's the path she chose.
Yeah.
So that's one example.
After you helped her to lift away and create space of quiet and stillness, what is your role in that dynamic after that?
I mean, my role can go on for as long or as short of a time as a given client wants to work with me. So somebody might see me for 3 sessions and then say, hey, like the thing that I wanted clarity on, I got, and I'm going to move on in my life. And maybe they would come back to me at a later date if they needed support in another area. But I mean, generally, I'm always a supporter for a client who maybe isn't working with me one-on-one anymore. So it's really like the work that I do has a starting and a stopping point.
Yeah.
So it's not as if I would work with someone for their entire lives, although I could. And, we all need coaching for different things probably at every point in our life. But the coaching work that I do is more oriented around a specific goal or a specific topic. And it's largely like, how do you envision your future? And what are the things that you can do to get to that place?
How do you see coaching as different than maybe seeing a psychotherapist or seeing a counselor or committing to a guru? What is your difference from those roles? Yeah,
it is quite different. So generally speaking, coaching is forward-looking. So if you work with a coach, if you worked with me as your life and wellness coach, what we do is look at what you want to manifest or create in your future and how are you going to get there. And that might take into account, your life experience and what you've been through per se, but we're not going to unpack your past, which is often what happens when you're talking to a therapist or a psychiatrist. It's backwards looking and kind of understanding what are the layers that are in you today. So that's the largest difference, I would say.
Do you find that people want to supplement their coaching with something that makes them look backwards at the past in a more clearer light?
It really depends on the client. I mean, I think everyone could benefit from both therapy and coaching, but I think there are some people who have a pretty good understanding of, where they've been and where they want to go. So working with a coach is better in that scenario. And sometimes you have to kind of unravel your past to be able to move forward. And so another part of my job is to know when to refer somebody to somebody else. So if I'm talking to someone, I'm like, I think that we could do great work together, but this conversation would be better gone through with somebody else. Like, I'm here to be a conduit too for them to find who they need if it's not me as a coach right now.
And do you think being such a networker also brings support for you as well?
Yeah. I mean, in an integrative clinic that I work in right now as a coach, I've just been exposed to a lot of modalities that I wouldn't have been. Like, I've been seeing a homeopath, and I started seeing a chiropractor, and there are all of these things that are kind of quote unquote alternative, but ultimately contribute a lot to my own personal well-being. So yeah, I mean, I'm just getting deeper and deeper into this world of kind of holistic health, and there's a lot to be explored and learned from. And I, of course, benefit personally from everything that I learn as well.
What's one thing most people don't know or don't think about with holistic health that you think is really important that we do know? I mean, generally, I think people should educate themselves about their options outside of the Western medical system whenever they are considering going to see their doctor, like their MD, their medical doctor, because there's so much that can be addressed, whether it's with a nutritionist or a counselor or, acupuncture or traditional Chinese medicine. I think not letting your doctor be this be all end all. Yeah.
It's great when they can work across borders because there's a lot that Western medicine can treat. So I don't want to say that there's not value there. But the best case scenario is when you actually combine the modalities. So it's not one or the other. Hopefully you're able to talk to multiple people who have different ways of looking at your issue or whatever it is.
What do you think is a single habit that each of us could incorporate into our daily lives that would make us healthier and happier and more in line with our true purpose?
gratitude is what I'd say I know. I think counting your blessings, as cheesy as that sounds, it's probably knit onto like a hanging in your grandma's house. It generates like positive feelings in your body. It releases endorphins. It brings you into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your relaxation response versus fight or flight. Like, it's good physiologically. But it's also just a way to get some perspective on, what happened in a day. So if you, at the end of your day in bed or, after dinner, just sit and tell somebody or write down like 5 things you're grateful for in the day. It's a simple thing you could do.
Yeah. What have you been grateful for this week?
A lot. I guess the top of mind is just having some new clients to work with. I always feel really grateful and honored when a new client comes into my life because I get to learn from them and hopefully I get to help guide them. So I'm just grateful to be doing this work. I'm grateful for my dog Thor, who I'm fostering, and he's sitting here with us. He gives me a lot of joy and gets me out of bed in the morning by licking me incessantly until I do. So I'm grateful for him. He's helped me be more of a morning person. And I'm grateful for Minnesota and like the green I have in my yard, and I'm not jam-packed into a tiny apartment. Yeah.
What does it feel like to be living back almost within the culture you grew up in, being in Minnesota again?
I went through a phase where I hated it and I really wanted to leave. And I felt like living here was kind of giving up on the rest of the world. And retreating was kind of the feeling. Not in a good way. Like surrender kind of retreat.
What made that change?
Time, frankly, and just changing my values changed. So what I wanted in my life when I was 24 was going out with friends and being super social and having like super vibrant network of young people. And that would have been in California where a lot of my fellow Claremont kids were hanging out. And at this point, it's only been 3 years since then, but I value space a lot more. I value the chance to be quiet more. I value fewer but deeper relationships more. And it takes time to settle into a new place. I'm from northern Minnesota, so Minneapolis isn't my home. And I think it also took me that much time, so over 5 years, to feel like I had a new home here.
Wow. What was the home like you grew up in?
It was colorful and wild. What do you want to know about it?
You were homeschooled, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my mom is an artist and a singer and a sociologist by training. But she decided to take my brother and me out of school when I was in 2nd grade, and we actually spent 3 months of that year driving across the country in our station wagon with our pop-up tent trailer behind us, including our car died crossing the Rocky Mountains, so we had this pilot behind us, and just like going places that probably a station wagon and trailer shouldn't go kind of deal. And then like I said, I kind of blame my mom for a lot of things, but
what was she getting at trying to take the station wagon and trailer to random places that are far away and unreachable? What do you think she was trying to teach you?
She has an undying enthusiasm for life and curiosity about the world, and just the biggest heart I've ever encountered. And so I think she wanted to give that to us as much as she could. In that year, she also brought us to a lot of Native American reservations, and I think tried to do justice to the curriculum that she believed we should be learning. So, teaching us the reality of the world in her view was something that she really cared about. And I think she grew up doing that. Her grandpa's an engineer and built a trailer for her and her 3 older brothers, and, drove to Alaska, drove to Florida. So it's something that she learned from her parents, and hopefully I can do that for my kids. And, I think I was really lucky to be born to her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was this the same grandpa that you apprenticed with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You go into that. So I just read your essay on leadership and your personal development through that. And yeah, tell me, why did you quit? You were at Boston Consulting Group making 6 figures a year, and you quit to go live on a farm and work with a 97-year-old engineer?
Yeah, so he doesn't live on a farm, but he does live in a house he built on a lake in the northern reaches of Minnesota. And yeah, my grandpa, Robert Dustrud, he is, like you said, 97, and a really incredible guy who's super sharp. He's an inventor. He was a mining engineer. That's how we ended up on the Iron Range. And he has a business called Dustrud Folding Saws, which he runs still. And he invented, it's one of his patented creations, a saw that folds up into a tiny, less than 1 pound package. And
wow.
Yeah. And he makes them all himself by hand in his basement. And yeah, I just have great respect for this man, and he taught me a lot. And so when he asked if I would be interested in working on it with him, I mean, frankly, I did have to go through some pro and con lists, and, I wanted to do these things, and is this really what I should be doing? And then at the end of the day, it was like, obviously I should spend time with my grandpa, who isn't going to be here forever, and who, has played such a huge role in my life. So it was the kind of thing where I think my decision-making question was, in 5 years, would I regret not doing this? And the answer was, yes, I would definitely regret not doing this. So yeah, last summer, I spent a ton of time up north learning how to make the saw. So he has a whole workshop and does it all by hand. So I learned how to use all of his tools and bandsaws and, huge drills, and hammered a bunch of copper rivets by hand myself, a bunch as in hundreds. And yeah, helped him set up his website and do some things with marketing and sales and use my business skills. But I mean, the biggest thing was just spending time with him, and respecting him by doing that.
In the same series of essays I just read, you refer to yourself as a Jill of trades?
Yeah.
I really like that.
Because I'm a woman, so Jill.
You're really reclaiming it. Being a Jill of trades, you are required to learn a lot about a lot of different things. I guess I have 2 questions. How do you stay hungry for more? And also, how do you integrate all these seemingly unrelated pieces of knowledge or lines of thinking holistically to develop you and to work towards your greater purpose?
I mean, I guess it's hard to just explain why I'm curious about the world. I just kind of am. And I mean, I do feel really motivated by, if I learn how to build a website, then I'm going to have this platform where I can share my mission and people can come to it and hear my voice and connect to me. So when I'm learning things about my business, it's just really motivating because I think I'll have a larger impact if I do that. And I really like being self-sufficient. I think I probably learned that from my grandpa. If I can do it, I should do it instead of paying somebody else to do it. So that plays a role in it, where I want to be able to show that I can do it.
Nice.
And so now I've built many websites for myself and other people after teaching myself how to do it, for example. And then integrating things. I mean, being an entrepreneur, especially a solopreneur, you kind of have no choice but to integrate everything, because you're the boss and you're the coach and you're the marketer and you're the manager and you're, writing the checks and everything else. So in that sense, it's just what I have to do.
You put yourself in a position where it's necessary for your survival as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I mean, I could outsource some things, but at this stage, I think it's still so much of my baby, and there's so much creativity around it, and there's still so many decisions to be made. I like to do it myself. I think eventually, as a smart business person, I'll have to outsource, of course. But right now, it's really fulfilling to do it myself. And there is this kind of silly phrase, but people say, nail it before you scale it. And I believe in that, and I want to be good at what I'm doing, and I want to know, how things work and what I want them to look like before I ask somebody else to do it. And that includes even my coaching work. Before I build a team of coaches, I want to do a lot of coaching myself because I need to know what to look for in a coach, and I need to know what works and what doesn't. So I'm smart about how I build my company.
Yeah. What do you do to become a student to different practices that you need to learn?
Frankly, I have found myself in the classroom a lot in the last year. I did over half of a master's program at the U and learned a lot from studying from mindfulness teachers and other healers and other coaches and doing practicums and sitting in fish bowls and getting feedback and all of that, like formal learning. I also have some amazing yoga teachers, including Jason, who I think you interviewed. But like being in yoga classes and being near to people who you find to be wise, or I find to be wise, like just stuff he'll say while I'm in his yoga class will stick with me and will influence how I live my life and make decisions. I also have great mentors who I'll seek out, like I was telling you about Jamie, or there's another woman named Portia Richardson, who I share a space with in Uptown here in Minneapolis. And I think it's just finding those people who you want to learn from and then like hanging out with them and finding ways that you can work with them and help them so you can essentially like apprentice with them. But it's more of a real life classroom rather than, finding a university and registering for a course.
What's your vision for Starr Health Co? Where do you see it in 5, 10, 15 years? Mm-hmm. I asked that because before you mentioned that when something becomes easy and comfortable, you look for what's next.
Yeah, totally.
Is that going to happen this time, or is it going to take on a life of its own that leaves behind a legacy?
So I have never run a company with employees, which is what I envision turning Starr Health Co. into. So that will be a challenge. My vision for Starr Health Co., I am building a company that eventually will be at a scale where I can support universities, high schools, schools with health professionals who are specialized in young women's health. So through an app, through an online platform, I imagine being able to actually contract with a college, for example, and have virtual coaches available for their entire incoming class of freshmen. I'm just making up an example. But I would love to be scaled to a level where the knowledge and resources that I'm accumulating as an individual and then will continue to build by bringing on people who know things that I don't, will be more widely accessible. And it will be something that supports young women on their phone. So if they are struggling with something, they're able to, make an appointment easily and get the support they need and feel like they have resources that they can tap into instead of confronting something and feeling like they have no one to turn to.
Why is being virtual so important to you?
Just because it's scalable. I think being able to work in person is fantastic, and there's an energetic exchange that happens when you're sitting with somebody. But being virtual, I think that's where, I think they're like Generation Z.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Are you a Generation Zer?
No.
No? Okay.
I think that's my brother's. I think 22 is the cutoff. I'm 25.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. So them and then like the generation before them have grown up using technology for everything and finding services on their phones and using apps. And I think one thing that I've seen in other like healthcare offerings is that it's not put into a format. It's like not going to where the young people are, so people don't use it. And I think some young people wouldn't even like go to the health services center for students because they have to go there and like sit down and make an appointment and talk to somebody or call them on the phone, or it just doesn't really fit into how they interact with the world.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like scalability, but also like going to where those, like my audience is hanging out, quote unquote, already, which would be on their phones or on their computers or, the technology. Maybe we can like virtually have what is it called when you project your body into a room?
Hologram?
A hologram. Yeah, maybe we can like hologram into places in the future. I don't know. But I think having like a platform. And I'd love to have a team here that I sit with in Minneapolis. I actually like have a building near to here that I've already been like envisioning as our office space. Thor will be our dog. and be able to have my team here work with young women all over the country or the world. I'm hopeful, but it's also, I think part of like playing the edge is having this grand vision and believing in it enough to make it happen. And then also being willing to accept failure if it does come, and hoping to be able to let go of whatever outcome occurs and just be grateful for having put in the effort and tried to make something happen in the world.
So what actionable step are you going to take next? Do you have a lingering question or something you want help working through? Do you need support in doing what it's going to take to live your purpose? People of Purpose is here for you. Subscribe to the podcast and soak in the stories and words of our wonderful guests. If you have any friends that might enjoy this episode or the podcast, bring them on board as a podcast subscriber. If you want to actually see the guests behind the voices, as well as the purposeful people and communities I'm a part of around the world, follow the podcasting journey on Instagram at People of Purpose Podcast. You can connect with our purpose-seeking community on Facebook at People of Purpose by liking and following our page. Know the minute each new episode is published, hear first about upcoming People of Purpose opportunities, and receive regular tidbits of inspiration and media I'm purposely perusing, pursuing, and pondering. It's simply a regular dose of goodness, intentionally filtered by me, to nourish your personal path of purpose. For the ultimate engagement, join our intentional group Purpose Seekers from the Facebook page. Join in longer-form discussions, link up with accountability partners, and share in opportunities and challenges to better know and grow in your purpose. Send me a direct message on either Facebook or Instagram if you want to talk privately and receive personalized guidance on how to raise your sails and right your ship. Come forth with your biggest dreams and aspirations, and I will do my best to connect you with the necessary resources and mentors from my network to start your trek along your personal path of purpose. Cheers, and here's to becoming